welcome to My Brain is a Wonderland, a podcast for neurodivergent women and the people who love them. Welcome back. You're here with your host, Emily, talking about neurodivergency, autism, ADHD, and being a woman. Today, I want to talk about physical touch, which I think is a hot button topic in the neurotypical realm as well as the neurodivergent realm. I think physical touch, consent, what people want, what people don't want. We want to be more touchy-feely. Men aren't getting enough touch affection, but women are maybe getting too much affection physically that they are not consenting to. And that can range from, hugging to, I had a man at a work event, a complete stranger who I did not know, who was just trying to get my attention. He wanted to ask me a question, came up behind me around the side of me and wrapped his entire hand around my waist and gripped my waist. So I had on a sweater, a couple of layers underneath that because it was cold, and I could feel him gripping my waist. And then he leaned into my ear to talk. And honestly, I couldn't tell at the time if that was predatory or not because it felt so uncomfortable. And he just did that out of nowhere to a stranger, to a woman he didn't know. So I'm going to talk about encountering those things, how I've reacted to those things, how I didn't realize I was touch-averse until my 20s, and just kind of go through that, and some tips on how to survive in this world where we're trying to increase physical touch, but we want it to be consensual, and just talk about that a little bit. So like I said, I didn't really understand that I was touch-averse, really, until my 20s. I was raised by a single mom, and she was touch-averse. I think she might be neurodivergent, and she was very touch-averse. So that was normal, right? We didn't hug. We weren't physical with each other. My grandmother was more so, my grandfather was not so. And most people in my family were not physically affectionate. It's just not, we weren't affectionate in any way, to be honest. So I didn't really realize this until when I moved to America in 2008. I first came in 2006 as an exchange student, but I moved here in 2008 to be with my now husband. This was after I graduated from my bachelor's in the UK and moved to America. And for the first 18 months, I think, something like that, when you first move and you're on a fiancé visa, you cannot work. You're not allowed to be employed. So I did a lot of volunteering. I interned for some artists. And then my first job that I got after I was allowed to work was I joined a ballroom dancing teacher training program. I had wanted to get more in touch with my artistic side after college. I felt like I'd kind of abandoned it. And I'd done a lot of ballroom dancing as a child in the UK, and this opportunity in California came up to join their teacher training program. So when I get there, it was all fun. It was all great. I ended up getting employed. The gentleman, it was run by a married couple. The gentleman thought that I was really cool and interesting. He pulled me aside one day for a meeting and said, there's something about you, which now I know means pixie dream girl, neurodivergent, crazy person. He said, there's something about you that people are attracted to, but you got to work on this, 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 and this. His wife did not like me. She called me logical gal, something like that, because she said I was so logical, right? Which makes sense now. But it was a very feminine environment, right? It's dancing, so there's more women in general. There's more female students. There's more female employees. And these women were so touchy-feely. I mean, I don't know if this is maybe just neurotypical women, and because I was surrounded by so many of them, which I think maybe some of them were neurodivergent. I mean, you're dancers. A lot of people have ADHD who are dancers in the service industry, but they were so comfortable with physical touch of strangers. And I remember one day, this is when I realized, right? This is when it first clicked. I was 22 years old when this happened. And one day, I'm in the studio, and out of the corner of my eye, I see something, I'm going to describe it as something coming at me. It was a very nice woman who had seen the earrings I was wearing, and she was reaching out to compliment them. So this was one of those things, when someone says, oh, look, and kind of reaches their hand towards you. Oh, I love your, and kind of cups your earrings, or, maybe places a hand on your shirt and says, I love that. I love that little ruffle or whatever. So she was reaching out to kind of touch my earrings and compliment me and say, I love your earrings. And she reached out towards my ear, and so she's on my right side, and I threw my head away to the left side and kind of spun around to my right. And the look on her face was shock. She was a bit scared. You could tell she was scared. Oh, have I done something? Oh my God, what just happened? You could tell she was looking at me like, what just happened here? I have never experienced this before. And me seeing her reaction made me think, oh, wait, why was that uncomfortable? Why are you reacting this way? I didn't want you to touch me. So that was the first time I realized, like, oh, okay. And then that happened a bit more, and kind of compounded that experience that women like to be affectionate and reach out to other women physically, mentally, and emotionally, and I did not respond well at all. It was very complicated at the time. And the funny thing is that I was in a dance community, right? And specifically ballroom dancing. So if you've seen Dancing with the Stars, it's different to ballet, right? You can dance as a ballerina for decades and never touch another person. Never touch a man as a woman. You're just dancing at the bar. You're dancing on your own. In ballroom dancing, you're not dancing unless you're dancing with another person and touching another person. So it's kind of funny to me now thinking about this, how my first job in America, my first job out of college was a heavy touch environment. That being said, I know now why I was comfortable with it, because it was prescribed touch. What I mean by that is ballroom dancing has a syllabus, like anything else, and you have certain moves, like in sports, certain plays, and everyone knows what the play is and where you're going to go, what you're going to do, how it's going to work. It's the same for ballroom dancing. We have moves. We know when we set up in frame. So when we're dancing together, where the hand is on the back and there's one hand joined together, we know where those hands go, and it's prescribed. It is told to us by an instructor. Your hand goes here, their hand goes there, and now we're going to do this move where this hand is going there. So everything is told to you prior. Nothing is a surprise. Ever. I will say there was one time that I still talk about with my husband that just almost sent me, and it was in that first job. I was working with a male student, dancing with him, and we were doing tango, which some of the dances can be, quote unquote, sexier than others. And my boss, who was instructing us and guiding us through choreography, ad-libbed. She decided to style it up, that this would be, because it was going to be a performance. And she told him, his hand was on my back where it's supposed to be in frame, and my leg went up his. We call it a leg crawl, so I'm like sexily put my leg hooked over his thigh. And my boss told him to run his hand down my back to my knee. I don't think she realized that in between my back and my knee is my butt. But he literally ran his entire hand down my back, down my butt cheek, to my left knee, right? Horrible. Absolutely horrible. Even if my butt hadn't existed, I don't want these kind of surprise things, but it was usually I'm good with, it's not going to go too far. It's going to be like, well, the hand's going to go here now. I'm used to that. Put it on my elbow, whatever. But running it down my back along my butt to my knee was so shocking. And I think maybe to someone else who wasn't touch-averse, it wouldn't stick so much, right? Like, it sticks so much in my memory that happened because my reaction was so visceral in my body. Like, it was just so, like, ugh, horrible, right? And actually, thinking about this, that wasn't the first time. This is the first time I'd realized I was touch-averse, but I realize now that when I would be confronted with physical touch I didn't want, it affected me really badly. When I was going into high school, I decided to go to a new school where I was, and it was an all-boys school at the time. So it'd been an all-boys school since before World War I. This was a historical high school. And they can't just, when they change it to a co-ed high school, which is what happened the year I went, they can't just mix girls into all 4 grades, right? That just doesn't work. There aren't enough girls switching schools for it to make sense, right? You just have like 25 boys and 1 girl maybe, or no girls. So what happened is they would, when the graduating senior class would leave, the new freshmen, they'd mix in girls. So that was my first year there. I was in a class of maybe 25, and there were 6 girls in my class in freshman year. And all the grades above us were all boys. So it was all boys who'd been used to an all-boys school with teachers who'd been there for decades only dealing with boys. And what inevitably happened is I would get touched frequently in the hallways at school. I would have my boobs grabbed, my ass grabbed. I'd bend over to drink from the water fountain. Someone would stick their hand up my skirt. I mean, sexual assault was constant and a daily thing. And I don't know, I don't really speak to any women that I went to school with there. If you're listening, feel free to reach out, man, because I look back on it like I feel so like it's an issue. Like, it really bothers me. And it was clearly something that, you know, it was like, like I'm being grabbed. Like, you'd be going through the halls, think about it, you know, when you're switching classes and there's hundreds of kids, right? And you'd just be grabbed out of nowhere. I'd have my boobs grabbed. I'd have out of nowhere. And it really, I don't think it was necessarily the sexual thing, though that's really annoying and horrible. But I think it was the touch aversion that has made me just so, remembering it so negatively. So I just have this thing where if someone touches me in a way I don't like, it's gonna haunt me. It's just gonna stay with me in a way that feels, I don't know, like aggressive. Even if, I mean, I think sexual assault in high school is aggressive anyway, but, you know, this kind of, like that student I talked about. He was told to do that. Maybe he took advantage of it. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. But I think about it in this way that felt like almost an attack. And that's how physical touch that I don't want feels like. It feels like an attack, and sometimes it even feels painful. So let me talk about that real quick. Soft and light touch, like kind of, you know what people might do if they're your lover or something? Run their hands up and down parts of your body. I literally, it was like nails on a chalkboard just then. I cringed. I just shivered. That drives me insane. And it always has. When I was younger, I liked to have my back scratched. My husband is a massage therapist, and so he can do deep tissue, things like that, and that's what I love. I love firm pressure in touch. You know, being held tightly, being my muscles manipulated hard. I do not like to be tickled, to have this gentle, which I think people think is or it is sexy. I guess when you're neurotypical or something, being lightly trailed with a finger or a feather, oh god, vomit, is sexy, is sensual. I don't even like the word sensual. Blah. It's up there with moist. Ugh. And it just, I just cannot stand it. And this was actually, and still continues to be, not an issue, but a thing between me and my husband. His love language, if you don't know what love languages are, there's like 7 of them. Some psychologists came up with them. It's how you receive and express love. So my husband's main love language is physical touch. Obviously, that's not mine. And we've learned to navigate that because I give him massages now, and I like firm pressure massages. But even now, we've been married for 14 years, together for 16. He will sometimes touch me, especially on my core, right? My core, like from my pubis to my neck. But like, he will sometimes touch me lightly, out of nowhere, and I will flinch. I will physically recoil. And we've had to discuss this because to him that's a rejection, right? That's a rejection of his love. And I've had to kind of explain it's not at all, and how much I want him to touch me, but in a way that I enjoy, which is difficult because he has ways that he enjoys, right? That he wants to express. So I get that. And my love languages are not physical touch. They are quality time and gifting. Those are my top two. The last thing I want to talk about with physical touch is hugging. If anyone is listening who, I say at the beginning, and for people who love neurodivergent women, if you're a spouse, a family member, please listen to this about hugging. I hate hugs. I freaking hate them. And you know why I hate them even more than I would usually? Is because people inflict them upon you. Right? People think that hugging is something, or huggers, people who like to hug, it's something that people need. But I think huggers oftentimes it's something they need. They want to hug someone to feel that emotional connection. Well, I'm not here to fulfill that connection for you. I am my own person who has my own needs. And here's the thing. You can ask someone if someone wants a hug. I remember working in a doctor's office one time, and this middle-aged older lady came by after her appointment and said, "Do you ladies need a hug?" And I swear to God, I almost burst into tears and gave her a hug. And it was so affectionate and loving. And that she'd asked me and that I did want it in the moment felt so good. The people, and if you're listening, I'm sorry, but the people out there who I'll always extend a hand, right? When I first meet someone, it's a handshake. Hand gets extended, it's like my barrier. The people who reach towards you and grab you and say, "Oh, I'm a hugger." I'm not a hugger. I don't want to be hugged in that moment. It's why I extended my hand. I'm not offering a hug. I didn't even ask you if you wanted a hug. You need to step back and think about why you feel the need to hug someone who A, hasn't asked for it, and B, if you actually paid attention, probably completely tenses up, cringes, and shows physically that they don't want it. Okay? This is one of the things, it used to happen a lot, obviously, with my husband's massage therapist friends, because they're all touchy-feely, right? And I would go and see them for the first time, extend a hand, say, "Hey, oh, nice to meet you, I'm Emily." And they go, "I'm a hugger," and grab me and pull me in. And it just sullies the entire thing. So I've walked in, I've already had to get myself together to get to this appointment that I say appointment, it's supposed to be fun social time. Maybe we're meeting at a bar, at a restaurant, at a party. I've already geared myself up for this whole thing. Worn something that's comfortable. Got my earplugs in. Only eaten foods or barely eaten that day. Only eaten foods that are safe. All day. Then I get there and the first thing you do is just strip my boundaries away. Take away my consent through the guise of loving. That's not loving to do that. Just step back and just think about what it would be like to be physically accosted. It's exactly what it feels like. I just want to say that isn't a bad thing to want a hug from someone you love or someone you've just met to try to bond with them. That's not a bad thing, okay? But think about, why do you need that? Why do you need the hug when the other person doesn't want the hug or did not consent to it? And why are you assuming that everyone wants hugs? Maybe it's this touch positive culture that we're trying to cultivate, which I totally support. Men need more hugs. Everyone needs more touch and more, connection. I totally get that. But just think about it. I'm just asking you to just think about it. So what can you do to help? Like I said, ask about touch prior. If you can absolutely, when someone offers a hand, here's all I would say. If someone offers a hand, they probably don't want a hug, okay? for you to ask them after that. To be fair, if you asked me and I extended a hand, I'd probably say, yeah, sure, because I'm uncomfortable at that point. If they offer a hand, don't ask them. If you're not sure, there's no indication, and you're standing there, you can say, can I give you a hug? And they may say yes under duress. That's on them at that point. But you need to listen to what they actually say. If they're neurodivergent, for the most part, they won't lie. But if they're coming across as pensive, maybe they don't want the hug. Maybe gauge it more. You're not going to be able to change that person in the moment by giving them a hug. It is very unlikely that you will, quote unquote, get them used to it. This is a brain cognitive situation. You're not just going to expose them constantly to physical touch until they love it. That's not going to happen. Trust me. I've been 16 years with a massage therapist. It hasn't happened. You cannot do that. Firm pressure is the other thing. Check with the person, obviously, if you have a spouse, a child, a cousin, whoever, best friend. Ask them, do you think firm pressure might work? Ask them if they like that, if they've ever encountered that. They may be averse to all types of pressure. I'm just telling you what I like, and generally neurodivergent people prefer heavy pressure. And the last thing, this might be helpful to the neurodivergent women listening, is that generally neurodivergent people prefer to give than to receive. So this happens in sex for me. I just said that because I'm not an explicit podcast. It happens for, any physical touch situation. I don't mind hugging people. I don't mind giving during an intimate moment with my husband. And that's usually what ends up happening is I take control of the situation and give a lot because I'm not comfortable receiving. I don't want to receive all this physical touch. So a lot of the times neurodivergent people, like an autistic child, might be very comfortable hugging their parent themselves when they choose to. So initiating a hug, but may be a total basket case if you try to hug them, right? And it's because it's within their boundaries of what they're comfortable with. It's what they are in control of. They don't want to be, being touched out of nowhere is like a finger on my body, I swear to God, just sends me. That's another thing. If you're neurodivergent listening and struggling with this, think about that. Do you tend to take control in these situations? Do you give physical touch versus receive? And that's not a bad thing. Just know about that. And that can create a really interesting dynamic for you with your spouse, with your kids, right? If you're just giving to them constantly and love that. So think about that. Don't write yourself off quite yet. We have plenty of things to offer the people that we love. And with that, I just want to say, if you have been listening and enjoying what you're listening to, please leave a review wherever you're listening to your podcasts. I would love to hear from you. All of my contact information is in the show notes. It's My Brain is a Wonderland or My Brain is a Wonderland pod, almost everywhere. I'm so happy you've been here with me today listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.